$200,000 for one night, he said. I stood there, frozen, gripping the towel wrapped around me like it was the only thing tethering me to reality. My stepdad, Adam, stood just a few feet away, his eyes locked onto mine with a mix of confidence and desperation that made my skin crawl. It was as if he had practiced this moment, rehearsed every word. For a long, nauseating second, I couldn't process what I had just heard. Then, the shock turned into rage. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I screamed, my voice shaking with disbelief and disgust. I instinctively backed away, my heart pounding so hard it drowned out every other sound. "My name is Michelle. I'm 33 now, married, with 2 kids, and thankfully, far removed from the version of myself standing in that hallway all those years ago. Back then, I was 25, fresh out of college and drowning in student debt. I had just started a job as an assistant professor at a community college, struggling to make a name for myself while barely scraping by. My dad had moved overseas when I was a teenager and had all but disappeared from my life. My mom, Julia, remarried when I was 20. That's when Adam entered the picture. Let's just say he was not the kind of man I would have ever chosen to have in my life. But my mom adored him, or at least, she pretended to. He was wealthy, a businessman in his mid-40s, and he provided for her in a way that seemed to matter more than anything else. My mom was a bit older than him, but she acted like she had won the lottery. I rarely visited, but money was tight, and staying at her house for the weekend meant saving on groceries and utilities. I figured, why not? Maybe we could actually have a decent conversation for once. That afternoon had started out normal enough. I went for a jog in the brutal summer heat, and by the time I got back, I was drenched in sweat. When I stepped into the kitchen, I saw a note on the counter: "Mom's out visiting a friend. Adam went grocery shopping." Perfect. With the house to myself, I headed straight for the shower, not bothering to grab clothes. Why would I? No one was supposed to be back for hours. After my shower, still wrapped in my towel, I made my way to the guest bedroom where I had left my clothes. It never even occurred to me that someone might have come home early. But as soon as I turned the corner, I saw him. Adam. Standing at the end of the hallway. My stomach dropped. Something was wrong. At first, I thought maybe I had startled him, or maybe he had startled me. But then he smiled. Not the friendly, stepfather-type smile. No, this was something else entirely. Before I could say a word, he stepped closer. Too close. "You're beautiful, you know that?" His voice was low, almost testing the waters. I froze. My mind screamed at me to move, to run, but my body refused to cooperate. I felt like I was trapped in quicksand, sinking deeper with every breath. Then he said it. $200,000 for one night. Like he was negotiating a business deal. His tone was so casual, so eerily composed, that for a moment, my brain struggled to comprehend what he was saying. And then it hit me, he wasn't joking. Every disgusting word had been deliberate. The air in the hallway felt suffocating. My pulse thundered in my ears as a sickening mix of rage and horror built up inside me. "What the hell did you just say?" I managed to choke out, my voice barely above a whisper. It didn't even sound like my own. Adam didn't even flinch. He just stood there, that smug, infuriating smirk still plastered across his face. "You heard me," he said with an effortless shrug, like he was suggesting something as casual as grabbing coffee. "Think about it, Michelle. 200 grand. You could wipe out your loans, get a fresh start. No one would ever have to know." Something inside me snapped. Fury surged so fast that my hands started to tremble. "Are you out of your mind?" I shouted, stepping back like his words had physically burned me. "What kind of person do you think I am?" He didn't budge. Didn't look guilty. If anything, he seemed bored, as if I was the one overreacting. "Relax," he said smoothly, his voice grating on my last nerve. "It's just an offer. No need to make a big deal out of it." A big deal. He was standing there, trying to buy me, and had the audacity to act like I was the unreasonable one? My entire body shook with disgust. I couldn't even look at him anymore. I turned on my heel and bolted for my room, slamming the door shut and locking it. The click of the lock was the only thing that gave me the smallest sense of security. I pressed my back against the door, trying to slow my breathing, but my heart was still hammering so hard it hurt. I felt trapped, not just in this room, but in this whole situation. What the hell was I supposed to do? I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to throw something just to hear it shatter. But more than anything, I wanted to be anywhere but here. And the worst part? I had no one to call. My mom? She wouldn't believe me. She never did. Whenever something serious happened, she'd find a way to twist it into being my fault, like she always did. I sank onto the floor, hugging my knees, my mind racing in 100 directions but landing on nothing. Minutes crawled by, stretching endlessly as I sat there in silence. Through the thin walls, I could hear the low hum of the TV. Adam had made himself comfortable in the living room, like nothing had happened. The sheer audacity of it made my stomach turn. Then, finally, the sound of the front door opening shattered the unbearable quiet. My mom's voice floated in, light, casual, like it was just another normal evening. For a brief moment, relief flooded through me. She was home. But just as quickly, dread swallowed it whole. What was I supposed to say? Would she even listen? My palms were clammy as I reached for the doorknob, forcing myself to stand. I stepped into the hallway, my pulse thrumming in my ears. There she was, setting her purse on the counter, completely unaware of the firestorm raging inside me. And there was Adam, reclining on the couch like he didn't have a care in the world. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat, forcing my voice steady. "Mom, I need to talk to you. Alone." She turned, her brow creasing slightly. "What's wrong?" she asked. Not with worry. Not with concern. With impatience. I felt Adam watching us, like he was amused by all of this, like he already knew how this would play out. I gestured toward the kitchen, my hands trembling at my sides. "Can we just talk in private?" Mom let out a sigh, clearly annoyed, but followed me anyway. As soon as we stepped inside, I gripped the edge of the counter, trying to find the words, my voice barely holding together. "Mom," I said, my throat tightening. "Adam said something to me. Something disgusting." Her expression shifted, but not in the way I had hoped. No concern. No shock. Just irritation. "What are you talking about?" she asked sharply, her tone edged with disbelief. I took a deep breath, feeling as if I were standing on the edge of a cliff, about to jump. "He offered me money, $200,000, to sleep with him." The words burned as they left my mouth, each syllable tasting like acid. I braced myself for shock, for anger, for anything, but what I got instead sent a cold wave of dread through me. Her expression hardened, and instead of outrage, she let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, for God's sake, Michelle. Don't be ridiculous." I stared at her, completely stunned. "I'm not lying," I said, my voice rising in desperation. "He said it. Not long ago. In the hallway." But she wasn't listening. She was already shaking her head, her lips curling into a sneer. "You're unbelievable," she scoffed. "I should have known you'd pull something like this, always looking for attention, always trying to stir up trouble." My breath caught in my throat. My own mother, was dismissing me like I was some troublemaker spinning wild stories for fun. Tears burned at the back of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "I'm telling the truth," I said again, louder this time, my voice trembling with frustration. She raised a hand, cutting me off with an expression colder than I'd ever seen. "Enough, Michelle. Let's hear what Adam has to say about this." She spun on her heel and marched back into the living room, and I had no choice but to follow, my heart hammering in my chest. Adam looked up from the couch as if we'd just interrupted a peaceful evening. "Adam," my mom snapped, her tone laced with anger. Michelle just told me you said something completely inappropriate to her. She's claiming you offered her money for. She hesitated, shooting me a cutting glare before making a suggestive face, clearly uncomfortable even saying the words. Adam leaned back slightly, his expression shifting to one of exaggerated concern, like he was the one being wronged. Julia, I hate to say this, but it's actually the opposite of what she's claiming, he said, shaking his head as though the accusation itself was absurd. She came out of the bathroom in just a towel, and honestly, it felt like she was trying to get my attention. He turned to me, his eyes filled with fake sympathy. I didn't want to bring it up because I didn't want to upset you, he continued, glancing at my mom. But now she's twisting everything around, and I can't just sit here and let that happen. I felt the blood drain from my face. What? I choked out, my voice breaking as I took a step forward. That's not what happened, and you know it. But Adam remained completely composed, raising his hands in mock defense. I swear, Julia, I was going to let it go. I didn't think it was worth making a big deal out of, but I can't sit here and let her accuse me of something like this. His voice was steady, measured, calm and reasonable, as if I were the one being irrational. I turned desperately to my mother, pleading silently for her to see him, to recognize the lies spilling from his mouth. But the look on her face made my stomach drop. She wasn't looking at Adam. She was looking at me. And she was furious. For a moment, she didn't speak. But she didn't have to. The sheer weight of her glare said it all. She believed him. Of course she did. Unbelievable, she muttered, shaking her head in disgust. You come into my house, and this is how you behave? How dare you, Michelle? Her words hit me like a slap. My face burned with frustration, my entire body trembling with a mix of rage and disbelief. You're seriously taking his side? I shouted, my voice cracking under the weight of my emotions. He's lying, Mom. He's lying to your face. But she wasn't listening. She didn't even hesitate. Instead, she turned to Adam, resting a hand on his shoulder as if he were the victim in all of this. I'm so sorry you had to deal with this, she said, her voice thick with sympathy. That was it. That was my breaking point. I couldn't take another second in that house. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my bag, my pulse pounding in my ears. You know what? Forget it, I said, my voice trembling with exhaustion and rage. Believe whatever you want. But I'm done. I didn't wait for her response. I just turned and walked away, my vision blurring as hot tears welled in my eyes. The weight of betrayal pressed so hard against my chest, I could barely breathe. I made it to the front door, reaching for the handle, when I heard her voice behind me, cold, sharp, filled with something I couldn't even recognize anymore. I didn't expect much from you, Michelle, but I never thought you were a... She stopped, but I knew exactly what she had almost said. I spun around, still gripping the door handle, my entire body shaking with fury. Don't you dare, I said, my voice low but edged with rage. My eyes burned as I locked my gaze onto hers, refusing to let her say what I knew she wanted to. You want to believe him? Fine. But don't you ever call me that. For a moment, I thought she would say it. That she would go through with the final, cruel betrayal. But instead, she just folded her arms and turned away, dismissing me like I was nothing. I didn't give her the satisfaction of another word. I yanked the door open, stepped outside, and slammed it behind me with every ounce of strength I had left. The second I was outside, the tears came faster, but I refused to let them see. Not my mother. Not Adam. No one in that house deserved to see me break. I rushed to my car, threw my bag into the passenger seat, and climbed inside, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My breath came in uneven gasps, my chest heaving as the reality of what had just happened sank in. I had lost her. I had lost everything. I started the car and pulled out of the driveway, driving aimlessly through the streets. The houses and streetlights blurred as my tears spilled freely. The anger, the humiliation, the sheer weight of it all, it was too much to hold in anymore. Finally, I pulled over, parked on the side of the road, and let everything crash down on me. My hands clutched the steering wheel as sobs racked my body, my shoulders shaking, my whole world crumbling around me. For a long time I just sat there, trying to catch my breath, wiping at my face with the sleeve of my sweater. But the knot in my chest refused to go away. I needed to talk to someone. Anyone. But who? My mom was out of the question. I wasn't going to some friend who would twist this into gossip. Then, a name flickered in my mind, John. Back then, he was just a good friend, someone I had always trusted. I hesitated for a moment, embarrassed, unsure if I even had the strength to say the words out loud. But I knew that if I didn't, the weight of it all would consume me. With trembling hands, I picked up my phone and dialed his number. It rang a few times before his voice came through, steady and familiar. Michelle? Everything okay? That was all it took. The tears started again, and I could barely get the words out. John, I said, my voice cracking. I need to talk to someone. Can I just tell you what happened? I braced myself, unsure of how he'd react, whether he'd judge me, dismiss me, or think I was making too much of it. But at that moment, I didn't care. I just needed to let it out. Back then, John and I were nothing more than friends, good friends, but nothing romantic. We'd met at the community college where I worked, and from the start, he had this easygoing nature about him. The kind of guy who always knew when to crack a joke to break the tension or when to just listen. Over time, we'd grabbed coffee here and there, and I'd always felt at ease around him. He never pushed, never judged, just a solid, reliable friend. That's why, despite how raw and humiliated I felt, I dialed his number. He was one of the very few people I trusted to hear me out without twisting my words or making me feel even worse. As the phone rang, a part of me hesitated, wondering if I was dumping too much on him. But the moment he answered, I knew I'd made the right call. His voice was calm, steady, a stark contrast to the turmoil I was drowning in. Hey, Michelle, he said, concern lacing his words. What's wrong? You sound upset. John suggested we meet at a park nearby. Maybe he could tell just from my voice that I needed to get out, to talk face to face with someone who wouldn't make me feel small. I drove there, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My hands were still shaking when I pulled into the parking lot. I spotted him sitting on a bench under the shade of a towering oak tree. He stood as I approached, his usual relaxed demeanor replaced by quiet concern. Hey, he greeted softly, offering me a small, reassuring smile. You okay? I shook my head, biting my lip to keep from breaking down again. We sat down, and for a few moments, I just stared at the ground, trying to gather myself. Then, with a deep breath, I let it all spill out, Adam's disgusting offer, the way my mom refused to believe me, how she twisted it back onto me like I was the problem. The words tumbled out, fueled by a mix of anger and relief, as if I was finally unloading a weight I'd been carrying all night. When I finally finished, I hesitantly looked up at John, half expecting to see doubt in his eyes, the same skeptical expression my mom had given me. Instead, his face was set with quiet, simmering anger, not at me, but at them. Michelle, he said, his voice steady, unwavering. I believe you. Every word. The ground beneath me felt a little less unsteady. His words anchored me in a way I hadn't expected, and before I knew it, tears welled up, not from sadness this time, but from sheer relief. Thank you, I whispered, barely able to get the words out. John shook his head, his jaw tightening. You shouldn't have to deal with this. What he did, it's disgusting. And your mom, she should have had your back. No question. His words felt like a balm on an open wound, soothing yet stinging all at once. For the first time all day, I didn't feel completely alone. I took a shaky breath, trying to steady myself, but once I started talking, I couldn't stop. You know, it's not just this, I admitted, my voice unsteady. My mom, she's always been distant with me. Ever since Lily, I swallowed hard, the name alone tightening my throat. Ever since my sister died. John didn't interrupt. He just nodded, letting me find the words. I was 7, I continued, my voice barely above a whisper. We were at the playground. She chased after a ball, ran into the street, and the memory hit like a wave, crashing over me, pulling me under. The screech of tires. The screams. The way the world seemed to slow down and then snap back all at once. It was an accident, I said, my voice breaking. But it's like my mom never saw it that way. After that day, everything changed. She stopped looking at me the same way, stopped hugging me, stopped, I inhaled sharply, my fingers curling into fists. She just shut me out. And now, tonight, it's like she's blaming me all over again. Like I'm the bad one. Like I deserve this. I don't even know why I thought she'd believe me. My voice cracked on the last word, and for the first time since this nightmare started, I let myself break just a little. Tears slipped down my cheeks, and I hastily wiped them away, embarrassed by how much I was unraveling. The days that followed blurred into a haze of anger, hurt, and sleepless nights. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the image of Adam's smug face, the way he twisted the truth so effortlessly, turning me into the villain. But what cut deepest of all was my mother, how quickly she had taken his side, how she hadn't even hesitated to defend him. The more I thought about it, the more I knew I couldn't just let this go. I couldn't stand by while he got away with it, not when I knew the truth. I needed proof. Something undeniable. Something my mother wouldn't be able to ignore, no matter how hard she tried. The idea struck me late one night as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying every moment like a broken record. My phone. I could record him. It was simple. I always had it on me. My pulse quickened at the thought. If I could get Adam to repeat what he'd said, or even hint at it, I'd finally have something solid. Something my mother couldn't twist against me. I knew the only way to catch him off guard was to play along, to make him think I was reconsidering everything. The thought alone made my stomach turn, but I knew it was the only way. That evening, I called him, keeping my voice steady, carefully crafting my words. Adam, I've been thinking about what happened the other day, I said, forcing a hesitant tone. Maybe we should meet somewhere quiet and talk. I feel like, maybe we misunderstood each other. Silence stretched on the other end, and I held my breath. Then, finally, he spoke. Well, I'm glad you're being reasonable about it, Michelle, he said, his voice carrying that same infuriating smugness that made my skin crawl. Where do you want to meet? I forced myself to stay calm. There's a park nearby, I suggested. It's quiet. No interruptions. He agreed without hesitation, and the moment I hung up, I opened my phone's voice recorder. I ran through the plan over and over, rehearsing my words, pushing down the fury bubbling inside me. This was my shot, and I couldn't afford to mess it up. When I saw Adam approaching the bench where I was waiting, I discreetly tapped the record button, keeping my phone hidden in my jacket pocket. My palms were clammy, but I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay composed. Hey, Adam, I greeted softly, offering a nervous smile. Thanks for meeting me. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, and I wanted to apologize if I misunderstood anything. He grinned, that same self-satisfied smirk he always wore when he thought he had the upper hand. I appreciate that, Michelle, he said, sinking onto the bench beside me. I knew you'd come around eventually. Sometimes emotions get the best of us, you know? I nodded as if agreeing. Yeah, maybe I overreacted. I mean, I was caught off guard, and I probably didn't handle things the right way. I hesitated just enough before glancing at him. I need to understand. What exactly did you mean when you mentioned the money? His expression flickered, just for a moment, like he was carefully measuring his response. Then, he leaned forward slightly. Look, he said, lowering his voice, I only brought it up because I thought we had an understanding. You're a smart, beautiful woman, Michelle. I thought you'd recognize the opportunity for what it was. I swallowed hard, keeping my voice steady. But $200,000, that's a lot of money, Adam. Why would you even offer something like that? What were you expecting from me? He chuckled lightly, shaking his head like this was some casual conversation. I wasn't expecting anything, really. Just testing the waters, seeing if maybe you'd consider it. I mean, you're struggling, right? I thought it might help us both. My stomach churned, but I forced myself to stay neutral. Help us both? I asked, my voice steady, controlled. How, exactly? Adam smirked, leaning back on the bench like he was perfectly at ease. Let's not play games, Michelle. You know exactly what I meant. I didn't think you'd make such a big deal out of it. It's not like anyone else had to know. I let the silence stretch between us before speaking again. So, you were serious about the $200,000? He shrugged, completely unbothered. Of course I was. I don't say things I don't mean, Michelle. I figured you'd appreciate the gesture. Each word fueled the fire burning inside me, but I kept my expression calm, my tone light. My phone, nestled in my pocket, was recording everything. I glanced away, pretending to hesitate. I mean, you're not wrong, Adam, I said softly, as if embarrassed. I am struggling. Money's tight, and with my loans, I feel like I'm drowning most days. I risked a glance at him, catching the faint flicker of excitement in his eyes. He shifted slightly closer, his voice taking on a false warmth. You don't have to feel bad about that, he said, his tone almost comforting, but I knew better. You're a smart girl, Michelle. You've got options, and I'm offering you something that could change your life. It's not just about the money, it's about making things easier for both of us. I nodded slowly, pretending to consider his words. It's just, I don't know. I've never thought about something like this before. I hesitated, then forced out a nervous laugh. I mean, it's not like you're unattractive or anything. His smile widened, and he straightened up, puffing out his chest slightly. Well, thank you, he said smoothly, his confidence growing. See? It doesn't have to be awkward. I knew you'd understand eventually. This could be good for both of us, Michelle. You just have to let yourself see it that way. I glanced at him again, feigning uncertainty. Maybe you're right, I murmured, standing up slowly. I just need some time to think about it. Can I let you know in a couple of days? I just need to wrap my head around everything. Of course, he said, grinning now. Take all the time you need. I'm glad we could talk this through. I gave him a weak smile, then turned and walked away, my phone still recording in my pocket. My hands trembled, not from nerves, but from adrenaline. I had him. Every single vile word was captured, undeniable, irreversible. And I knew exactly what I was going to do next. 2 days later, I dialed Adam's number. My stomach twisted as the line rang, but I forced myself to stay steady. This is part of the plan. I reminded myself. He picked up on the second ring, his voice smooth, eager, like he'd been waiting for this call. Michelle, he greeted, dripping with confidence. I was hoping to hear from you. Have you had time to think? I hesitated just long enough to sound conflicted, then said, yeah, I've been thinking. I'm ready to talk more about it, but I'd rather meet somewhere private, out of the way. His excitement was unmistakable as he replied, of course. Tell me where and when. I already had the location picked out, a high-end hotel downtown, the Grand Regent, a place Adam and my mom loved to name-drop like it made them important. The Grand Regent, I said smoothly. Let's meet in the lobby tonight at 8. We can work out the details there. He didn't even hesitate. Perfect. I'll see you tonight. The second I hung up, I leaned back and took a deep breath. Everything was set. My phone was fully charged, the recorder app prepped and ready to start at the press of a button. Adam thought he was winning tonight. But this time I wasn't walking away empty-handed. At 7:50, I called him again, keeping my voice calm but slightly rushed. Hey, I'm running a little late, I said, adding just the right amount of frustration. Traffic's a nightmare. Why don't you go ahead and wait for me in a suite? I'll meet you there as soon as I can. He took the bait without hesitation. No problem, Michelle. I'll let the front desk know you're coming. The second I hung up, I turned my car away from the hotel and drove straight to my mom's house. My grip on the wheel was so tight my knuckles ached. When she opened the door, her face immediately twisted with suspicion. What do you want? She asked, her tone sharp, defensive. I didn't waste time. Mom, you're coming with me, I said, my voice unwavering. She started to argue, but I cut her off before she could get a word in. If you don't come with me right now, I said, keeping my tone low but firm, I swear you will never see me again. Not a call, not a visit, nothing. This is your one chance. Her eyes widened slightly, a flicker of uncertainty breaking through her usual hardened expression. A tense silence hung between us before, finally, she grabbed her purse and stepped outside, following me to the car. The drive to the hotel was thick with unspoken tension. She sat rigid in the passenger seat, arms crossed, saying nothing. I kept my focus on the road, my heart pounding against my ribs, but my hands were steady. When we arrived, I guided her through the grand entrance of the Grand Regent. The air carried the rich scent of polished wood and fresh-cut flowers, the kind of luxury Adam and my mom liked to flaunt. I walked straight to the reception desk, my voice even and controlled. Hi, someone's waiting for me, but I don't know the room number. They said to give you my name. The receptionist nodded, typing into her computer before picking up the phone to confirm. A few moments later, she looked up and said, yes, room 704, 7th floor. I turned to my mom, holding out the key card. Let's go. She didn't respond, just followed me silently into the elevator. The ride up felt suffocatingly slow, the weight of what was about to happen pressing down on both of us. When the elevator doors finally opened, we stepped into the dimly lit hallway. I walked ahead, gripping the key card in my hand. My breath was steady, but my pulse was racing. Standing outside the door to room 704, I slid the card into the lock. A soft click. I pushed the door open. Adam lounged in the armchair, looking far too at ease. His eyes lifted to meet mine, expecting me to be alone, but the moment he spotted my mom standing behind me, his expression shifted. His smirk faltered, and in an instant, he shot up from his seat. What's going on? He demanded, his voice sharper than usual, his confidence suddenly wavering. I stepped forward, my mom following closely behind. Adam's face flickered between confusion and panic as he glanced between us. Michelle, what is this? He pressed, trying to sound composed, but I could already hear the cracks in his voice. I pulled out my phone, gripping it tightly. I figured it was time we cleared up that little misunderstanding, Adam, I said, my tone as cold as steel. You remember, don't you? Our conversation at the park 2 days ago. His gaze darted toward my mom, then back to me. Michelle, I don't know what you're talking about, he said quickly, his usual smugness nowhere to be found, replaced by an edge of panic. I think you're making a huge mistake here. I gave a small, tight smile, my hands only slightly unsteady as I pressed play on my phone. And then, his voice filled the room. Every disgusting word. Every slimy excuse. His offers, his explanations, his casual admission that he had meant every single thing he said. My mother's face drained of color. She stood frozen, her eyes wide as the recording played on, unable to look away. When it finally ended, I turned to her, my voice calm but heavy with emotion. That's the man you defended, I said, my words cutting through the silence. The one you chose to believe over me. So tell me, Mom, am I still the liar? Adam started stammering, his face flushing red with panic. Julia, you know she set me up, he blurted, his voice rising in desperation. She's twisting this, manipulating you. You can't believe this. She's just trying to turn you against me. But my mom wasn't looking at him anymore. She was looking at me. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out at first. Then, after a long moment, she whispered, "Is this real, Michelle?" Her voice was barely audible, but the crack in it was unmistakable. We didn't talk much on the drive home, but something between us had shifted. For the first time, I felt like she saw me. A week later, she filed for divorce. Adam was gone, out of our lives for good. She never saw him again. Neither did I. In the weeks that followed, my mom and I began to talk, really talk. Slowly, cautiously, our relationship started to heal. She apologized, truly apologized, not just for believing him but for all the years of dismissing me, for making me feel like I was nothing more than the shadow of the daughter she had lost. It wasn't an instant fix. But it was a start. For the first time, I felt like I mattered. Looking back, that night changed everything. It forced me to stand up for myself in a way I never had before. It was hard, painful, and messy, but it gave me back my voice. My life. Now, my mother treats me with the respect I always wanted. We'll never be perfect, but we found a way forward. And through it all, John was there. Checking in on me. Supporting me. Never once doubting me. What started as friendship grew into something more, something deeper. By the time I turned 30, we were married. And now, with Bobby and Emma, I finally have what I once thought I'd never find, a family built on love, trust, and respect. A home filled with the warmth I had spent my whole life searching for.